it's Emil from My Free Movement Coaching. Today I'll be presenting on a sequence of exercises that you can follow if you're finding that your lower back is just feeling a little tight. Okay, so to start, you will lay on your back and you want to have your knees bent. And basically all you're going to do with your feet fixed to the floor, you're just going to rotate your hips side to side. Don't worry about going too far right away, and just work within the confines of what your body has to offer. But this little sequence right here is a great place to start, and I would do 10 to 20 of these, we'll call them windshield wipers, from side to side. After you've done that sequence, the next thing to do is go ahead and you're gonna pull your thigh into your chest and then straighten the other leg. I'll then have you draw the thigh back in. You'll put this thigh down, pull the other thigh into the chest, and let that leg straighten. And I would go through this sequence a couple of times. When I say a couple of times, I think if you were to do 6 sets of this on each thigh, so I'm just coming into my second one here. Make sure you do pull the thigh into the chest before you straighten out that other leg. You might find as you go ahead and you straighten this leg, you might not go too far because you might feel some restrictions. I can go into detail as to why that's occurring, but we'll save that for another video. Okay, now we just got the hips opened up a little bit. If your lower back is feeling tight, think about your hips. Your hips are the doorway to the lower back in some instances. So that's why we started with the side-to-side rotations and then working on getting the hips to open up, let's say the front of the hip, okay? Now, if you need to, the next place to go to, if you're feeling tight on the glute, I would come in and roll your glute. You got 2 ways you can do this. You can just sit and focus on the one glute. In this case, I'm leaning off to the right. And then once I feel like I've gained some mobility, I'll go ahead and I'm going to put the tissue into a lengthened position. So by putting my foot on my opposing knee and getting this knee to drop down, now I'm actually lengthening tissue in the gluteal region, and then I'm going to be rolling it. So we're lengthening the tissue and then pinning it and hitting it with the foam roller. I should say gently rolling it with your foam roller. I would do that on both sides. The next place to go to, if the front of the hips are feeling a little spicy still, this is for your lower back, or for psoas, I should say, go ahead and you're going to bridge your hips up and take and get the foam roller so it goes underneath your pelvis. Okay, so not on your backbone, your pelvis is your hip bone. So in this position here, before you go any further, make sure you're comfortable and you feel stable because both legs are going to come up into the air. Now, if the foam roller's on your lower back, it's not going to feel good, and I wouldn't encourage you to do that. So now your next drill is you're going to pull one thigh into the chest and let this other thigh drape down, okay, with the leg straight. And I might just pause and just let that stretch settle in. You should feel a stretch kind of in the front of the hip. I say kind of. When I mean kind of, I'm meaning generally in this area. Sometimes I'll even feel it more in my adductor region, but that's basically where my psoas inserts onto the lesser trochanter of the femur. And then I'm going to switch, and then I'll come in and I'll draw onto the other side. Holding this stretch, ideally for 45 seconds to a minute, is a good place to start. All right, so we just did some stretching. We just worked on opening the hips up. Now we're going to lay on the foam roller, and we'll establish 3 points of contact on the foam roller. So I want to have my head in contact, the area we call the thoracic spine, that's where your shoulder blades are, and then your tailbone. And then in that region, you should have a little bit of space between your lower back and your neck. And we're referencing the natural curvature that you have in your spine. Now, what I like to do here is different than what you've seen with the other foam roller drills for your back that I've put out. We're going to just start with some posterior pelvic tilts. So oftentimes when we get a little bit of tightness in our lower back, we need to free up the hip flexors. When we free up the hip flexors, we can now start to encourage some good, what we call lumbopelvic disassociation, which is just a fancy term for helping get our hip unstuck from our back. And what happens sometimes is when we go to do global movements, in other words, big movements, our hip and our back are moving as one solid unit, and there should be some distinct differences or ability to function independent. So posterior pelvic tilts are great to do, a great way to get that going. After you've done, I'd say about 20 posterior pelvic tilts, and we're not doing this to strengthen muscles, we're just trying to encourage freedom of movement in the hip region. Now what I'll do is a familiar drill you've probably seen in the past, and we're gonna rock side to side. And we can use this little technique for, I'm going to reference two different purposes. So the purpose here is really to get the spinal column and the muscles in your body to relax. This can be a very gentle therapeutic approach to, or a way of encouraging your muscles in your back and in your core to relax a little bit. You may feel a little dizzy, a little disoriented, but then eventually you'll feel relaxed. If you tip too far, which we call spilling, now that's something where we're trying to encourage reflexive core stability, and I'm not interested in going there today. We're trying to get your back to relax and unwind a little bit. All right, so you've just done your posterior pelvic tilts, and then you did your rocks side to side. And then the next thing to do is let's work on expanding our ribs. So now we've focused on the hips. Now we're coming up to sort of the rib cage and the shoulders. I always tend to say sort of, I'm meaning in a general sense. So what I want you to do is inhale through your nose or just breathe in and expand the ribs as big as you can. Hold that air in there and then windshield wiper the arms back and forth. Your elbows should be straight. If you're having to bend your elbow, I'm going to show you, there's going to be another muscle we're going to think about in a minute that might have some influence on that. But that should help open your ribs up. Okay, now if you do have some troubles with that muscle I was referencing, the latissimus dorsi, your latissimus dorsi is a big muscle that runs down your back. And we tend to think of that muscle as the big muscle that the bodybuilders have with that V shape. So we tend to think of it as an arm muscle. But the latissimus dorsi is also a global core stabilizer, and it works off of your rectus abdominis. Okay, so when we think about what the rectus abdominis does, it's a trunk flexor. So we're working at when we do crunches, which is a lame exercise. Don't bother doing crunches unless you're looking for the six-pack. And then your lats, they can produce extension in your spine. I say produce extension. I can't say it really produces extension, but it's an extensor on the arm, and thus it can work as an antagonist off of your rectus abdominis. So one of the leading kettlebell instructors in the world, and quite frankly has set 4 world deadlifting records, references the latissimus dorsi as the anatomical police. So I like that term. That's Brett Jones. I can't take that term. Okay, so foam rolling your lat. What I'll have you do is you're going to get sideways on the foam roller. You want to be positioned that the side of your shoulder blade is in contact with the foam roller here. And then you're going to elevate your hip. So use your top leg here to get the hip off the floor or off the mat. And then you can come up and down just a little bit. And then I want you to take some time to more roll forward and then backward. And then take some time to determine where some triggers or the tightness may be. Now, after you've figured out where the tight area is, you can check in. You should be able to keep your elbow straight and bring that arm up overhead, rotate and lift. This position here, again, you heard me talk about pinning the tissue. This is the opposing action of the latissimus dorsi. So I'm bringing my arm up overhead, which in this case we're going to call flexion. I'm putting my arm now into external rotation, and then I'm lifting it up, I'm elevating it. So that would be adduction. So for those of you that are anatomically inquisitive, your latissimus dorsi is an extensor, internal rotator, adductor, and in this case here we're going into flexion, abduction, external rotation. There'll be a test on that at the end of the video. Okay, there you go. So your lat and your glute, there's a fascial connection in there. So Thomas Meyer's work, Anatomy Trains, will talk about the lateral line. So if your back's a little spicy, think about your glutes, think about your hip flexors, think about that latissimus dorsi, and you can try some of the sequences in this video. If you like what you're seeing, I would love for you to subscribe, hit the like button, and feel free to put a comment in, and I will reply to your comment. More content will be coming out, and I appreciate the support. Have a good day.